Well, let's talk about the 60th because we've had 3 episodes of Doctor Who.
Okay.
We've messaged a little bit, but we haven't talked about it properly. So we'll start with the Star Beast. I mean, Children in Need, whatever. It was just a little 5-minute kind of slightly fun thing.
The annoying
which
thing
probably I feel like caused more discourse than it needed to, but there we are. That's Doctor Who in 2023.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I don't mind the Davros thing.
Yeah.
I fully accept sort of when Rusty Davies is like, this is the lens that we see the character in now. I do agree with what they're saying about tropes and sort of like disformity and disfigurement is a trope for being evil, but there needs to be an in-world story reason as to why he's no longer using his life support system. And as long as there's an in-world reason for it, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I really liked it in in the Children Need, because that to me is pre-Genesis of the Daleks.
Yeah.
Way pre.
Yeah.
Way,
so
way, way
like,
pre.
why do you need to explain it?
Yeah.
Because within that story, you could just go from the narrative that it's set that much before, that it's before whatever happened to him to cause him to be in the chair. So like, did you need to go and make a statement about it? Was kind of my like, was it?
There's been a lot of statements.
Especially in Doctor Who Unleashed. I feel like Russell kind of uses the platform to like say, this is my opinion. I want to share this about this week's episode on commenting on society or something, which I get, and I get why people probably say, oh, it's all woke and stuff as well. But also, I do get why he's doing it, but sometimes it feels a little bit unnecessary.
It does feel kind of unnecessary because the statement is in the episode, is in the story, and it's it's subtly done, but it's there. And that's what you want, sort of like you don't want to be hammering on people's heads, I don't think, because that's when you get accused of sort of like being woke or sort. Yeah. I don't know what the word is, but all the stuff like the Celestial Toymaker. There's a massive like thread on Twitter that I have not read about why the Celestial Toymaker was not racist.
I was like 2 days later, this thread was still being added to. I was like, I'm doing great work, but I can't invest that much time into reading this thread.
No, exactly. And I was like, and it's like that just caused, because the idea of the Celestial Toymaker being a racist character is absolutely fine, and it's like I really like that element of it. I'm jumping, but I do love the Celestial.
It's fine.
We'll come back to it. But like that again, you don't need to explain why you made him racist. It just is what it is. But yeah, going back to Children in Need, the only thing that slightly like I thought at the time, they said that it wasn't going to be a comedy scene. They like really specifically said this is not a sketch.
It's a proper mini episode of Doctor Who.
But it was a comedy scene.
Completely. Like, totally.
Yeah, and it's like, when that music, I mean, you hated the music, I remember this.
Just the 2 minutes of generic comedy music going, you must laugh at this is funny, ha ha ha, is what it felt like to me.
It felt really odd as well, because that must have been among the final stuff that David Tennant did.
Yeah, because they filmed that in like April this year or something, didn't they? Like nearly a year after he finished on the 60th.
Yeah, and it's just
so weird.
And it kind of feels like that, because when you watch the Star Beast, I'm not saying that like all of like Otherworld continuity doesn't count, but that very much feels like the fresh point for David Tennant, like starting off. Yeah. And the Children needed him, but it was fun. I did like the general story of it. I was just a bit wrong-footed by the fact of not comedy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm realizing this more and more and more, and maybe I forgot this because it's so long ago, but Russell is the ultimate hype man.
Yes.
Absolutely anything. He will tell you anything is the greatest thing in television, the greatest thing ever. There's nothing ever been seen like it. Like, you have to really almost look past the hyperbole that he puts into literally anything he says. I've sort of forgotten that he's so extreme at that.
I don't think it's just him. I think it's the whole team, but totally. True. Because I've been reading Doctor Who magazine for like the last year where it's just propaganda. It's just them saying this is going to be the best thing, and then I start, but I have believed it, and
that's
then
the
you
problem.
Go, oh, this scene isn't the best thing ever. So yeah.
I feel like I'm having to readjust my sort of way I read what's said about Doctor Who by the production team, because yes, you always want to market and promote your show, but I feel like Russell and the whole team does it to such an extent that even an episode that most of the fandom thinks is terrible, he will probably say is amazing before the episode airs.
Because it's not for us that they're saying it.
Watching,
yeah, I don't know how I feel about. No, how I feel about it was that, so like watching the 60th, like my general viewing like experience first time, I think I was a bit disappointed especially with the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
And that was because my expectations were so high.
Yeah.
They were like rocketed high. And it was just that sort of thing of, oh, is this it? Or is this like sort of like, is this not, are we not doing this? Are we not doing that? And I think it was more that anticipation that like I didn't enjoy as much, because I loved the Giggle. I thought that I was absolutely astounded by. And then watching them all yesterday, I absolutely loved them. I think they're so rewatchable, like especially the Star Beats. I think that's really, really fun. And now I know what it is, and I don't have expectations for it to be something else. That makes it much easier to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I think we all kind of expected the 5th Day of the Doctor Mark II from the 60th. To an extent, we thought we kind of hoped, because that's our experience of anniversary specials, really, is Day of the Doctor. And whereas this is nothing like that, it was clearly never intended to be anything like that. And I think we just didn't really fully understand that going into it. And then especially when they chose to do things like hype Wild Blue Yonder to the extreme by telling you nothing about it, by putting redacted cast names in there. Obviously, we're going to assume redacted cast names is Matt Smith or whoever, not David Tennant, Catherine Tate again. Like,
I would say to everyone, it was Matt Smith, Karen Gillan, and Arthur Darvill.
Yeah, it made so much sense. And so, yes, it's our fault for hyping, for getting excited about something based on nothing, but also they kind of gave us those little bits to try and hype ourselves up to something that it then wasn't.
And they were like saying like, this is the best Doctor Who episode ever written. This is Doctor Who like it's never been before.
Yes.
It wasn't either of those things.
No.
But it was very good.
Yeah. I think the only thing you could say was not like nothing we've seen before was the bigeneration at the end. That's that felt like the only kind of unique thing in the 60s.
I think that I think Ncuti is unique as a Doctor. I think that sort of style of Doctor's never been done.
Yeah.
And I think one of the really big things that they've pushed is like how to write masculinity in the 21st century. Because if you think this is Russell's first time writing the Doctor since like 2010 or whatever, and we've had a lot of conversations like in society about what masculinity means since then. And when you have Moffat writing it, Moffat doesn't write about gender. It's I don't think that's like his strength. And Chibnall, obviously a female Doctor. So this is the first one where we've got a male Doctor who is clearly expressing his feelings towards people, romantic sort of friendship, like that sort of thing. Who is clearly vulnerable, and like one of the first things that Ncuti does is hug the Doctor. And just because of empathy and that sort of like, and being in touch with your emotions. And when the Doctor is like painted, when the Doctor is a hero without weapons and that sort of thing, I think they've really, really used these 3 episodes especially to show how they're going to write masculinity in the new series.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually. And I think, as you say, we're going to get quite a different Doctor, I think, with Ncuti to what we've had before, really, aren't we?
Completely. I think like I don't understand why the Doctor is in a nightclub on Christmas Day. Like that to me just does not seem a Doctor thing to do. And
I know. I'm a little bit like, oh, are we sure this is the right way to go?
Yeah, especially for a kids show as well. Well, it's not, but for a family audience, which has a large percentage of the audience is kids, this feels a bit. I don't know.
Yeah. And then that clip, have you seen that like 10-second clip that came out this week of like him being the gin and tonic inspector or something?
No.
That was on the 60th box set in the Unleashed, where they had the clip of the Goblin song. I think they hadn't cleared it for the Blu-ray release, so they've put a 10-second clip from the nightclub scene in there instead.
Right. Okay.
And up on Twitter, and it's basically just him meeting Ruby, showing the psychic paper, and saying, I'm a gin and tonic inspector or something like that. But it's just that kind of stuff where I'm like, is that quite right for Christmas Day family audience? I don't know. We need to watch it and see, really. But
it depends who the audience is now.
Yeah.
Because everything about these anniversary specials, like in the promo, was aimed towards our generation was a kid in 2008, is watching Sex Education now, probably watched Heartstopper, that sort of, do you know what I mean? It's very much, and so that, to me, it's very funny. And I would probably quite enjoy that sort of humour. Yeah. So is it now being aimed at our generation rather than kids? But I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, I guess. Well, we'll just have to watch Christmas and find.
Yeah.
I just think the whole new era is just going to feel very different. I think it's going to feel very fresh, very new, and I think that's what it needs. I think that's what the show needs.
Because I think that's what it didn't feel for the first 2 episodes to me.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's why I enjoyed the Giggle so much. Because it was like, okay, this is what I've been waiting for. It's someone's completely refresh the show, because that's what it needs, is that different people come up with different styles of Doctor Who, and then you need someone to do the complete opposite, which still works, but just keeps it fresh.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's look at the Star Beast then, because I feel like you were underwhelmed by the Star Beast when you first watched it. Well, that was the impression I got. Were you a little? Like, this isn't as great as I was hoping it was going to be?
I was underwhelmed. I think my frustrations were, like, seeing the Doctor and Donna on screen again was amazing.
Yes.
But the Doctor says to us 3 times at least, if she remembers me, she will die, and then gives her his sonic screwdriver, puts his face in front of her, very much makes no attempt to hide himself. And it's like, well, where is the dramatic stakes there? And then it's not even played for like sort of like him being selfish and slightly wanting her to remember him either. That's not really done, because right at the start of the episode, he says to Shirley, I will not be the one who kills her. So you very much got his motive there. So that to me doesn't track together really well. But I do like that they just get straight to the story. They meet straight away. There isn't this sort of partners in crime repeat. Yeah. And I think, like yesterday, it was really fun. It was really rewatchable. And if you sort of take those things to the side, then I think it still sort of works. Because the episode was very much sort of like, come back to Doctor Who. This is what Doctor Who is. This is the money we now have. This is the special effects. And there's the massive sequence like in the middle of the big unit battle.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of Doctor Who fans will love. Yeah. But to me, it's just that I'm not so bothered about that sort of kind of thing.
It felt like that whole battle scene went on for a very long time.
Yeah.
Was the thing that struck me. I just remember thinking like, okay, this is really chaotic and loud, and I'm kind of had enough of just shooting each other now. Let's move on to
but
just,
it was,
I don't know. But
I think it was that sort of show scale and sort of show this could happen in your road. This could be like down the street sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that sort of excitement factor. But it was quite like sort of like on one note. It wasn't, because we didn't like follow any of the people that were really involved in that battle.
No.
The people that we were following were trying to escape it with us. Yeah. So it's a bit like, well, what are the stakes? And you don't know the stakes at that point. Apart from the fact that you know some of the unit soldiers are zombies.
Yeah, like something.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of components. I think my frustration with Star Beast is there's a lot of fantastic components, which I absolutely love story-wise, but they're either rushed or not put together properly. Like the Meep. You've got the Meep's crash space pod. The spaceship which is going to blow the hole in the world, and the gas that sort of takes over the soldiers. Yeah. And the gas, I realised yesterday, is to do with the sun that also sort of made the Meep go mad.
Okay.
But I did not get that from the first.
Yeah. So what? So like the Meep was good, and then this sun and this sentient
they
thing.
Talk about like a psychedelic sun going mad.
Yeah.
And that the gas is meant to be the psychedelic sun.
Okay. It's like the Meep harnessed that psychedelic sun, or is the psychedelic sun kind of controlling the Meep then?
I think the psychedelic sun just sort of like, because it was at the Meep's planet, all the Meeps just sort of like, having seen it sort of like, you can't escape the sun. It just went mad, and it doesn't control them, but it changed their sort of like mentality.
Okay.
To go insane like that, and I just thought lots of those sorts of things weren't put together in one coherent thing.
Yes.
And it just needed a long runtime, which I think, like you've spoken about on your podcast, all of these episodes need to be like 90 minutes. Apart from middle, really.
Yeah, I think especially as it was the 60th, you could have had an easy excuse to make these all a little bit longer, which, especially when actually they're more like 55 minutes, most of them, rather than an hour.
Are they?
I think the first two are like 55 and 56 minutes, something like that. So it's like, even there's another 4 minutes you could have squeezed in just to help it a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like, they're extremely sort of like fast paced, but like the story's getting rushed over. Like, to me, the story of the Star Beast should be about like there's the Doctor and Donna, obviously, which is like the main serial story. Yeah. But then like the story of the week, it should be about Rose and the Meep. You do not like when you only see like sort of like one scene of Rose trying to hide the meat and sort of bond with the meat before Donovan like finds them.
Yeah,
and, it's
and
like,
then it's and just descends into farce after that.
Yeah, and it's like that sort of. I think that's a massive part because I listened to the audio adaptation of the comic story before watching this. I haven't read the original comic. I'm going to over Christmas. And I think that's the main part of like the comic is this sort of relationship between the meat and that companion style figure.
Yeah.
I was just sort of like there wasn't much depth in that.
I mean, what did you think of Rose and that whole storyline within the episode?
I think is it she or they? I'm not sure.
I can't actually remember.
No.
I don't know.
I think Yasmin Finney was a much more naturalistic actor in Doctor Who than in Heartstopper.
Okay. Yeah.
The acting was much better. But it's still not on a. When you put the problem is you put Rose in a scene with Catherine Tate, who is at the top of her game, and above everybody else, and that's really, really hard to match. So if you put her in that, you automatically notice if someone else isn't playing to that level. Yeah. I thought Rose didn't have much to do in the overall
in the actual episode, apart from randomly being the resolution. Well, not randomly, but like suddenly, oh wait, she's actually got a bit of the Dr. Donna, so that's the resolution. It felt.
Yeah, I don't like the resolution. That still doesn't work for me. It's in terms of what really doesn't work is the sort of. There's a lot of lines like sort of like, oh, this is something a male presented Time Lord would never understand. And I really, really despise that line because there's so much sort of like there's the scene in World Enough in Time when the Doctor's talking to Bill about like sort of like the Master being a man and now being a woman, and he's like, we're billions of years beyond your petty concepts of gender. And the Doctor's also been a woman, so why wouldn't they have kept
that whole like
learning?
Yeah, the whole let it go thing. Like, why wasn't that? So if you're saying that because it's a male Doctor that he can't realise it, well, why doesn't Jodie realise it all before then on the previous incarnation?
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't really make any sense.
But it's just it just undermines the character and their sort of acceptance of everyone and being above that sort of thing, and just the lesson. I don't know if you can just let go. Like that's just like, oh, I'll just take this bullet out of my heart, sort of thing. Like, do you know what I mean? It was such a massive thing, and then just say let it go. And I know people are saying, oh, maybe that's what like Donna was trying to say in Journey's End when the Doctor was trying to wipe her mind. She goes, no, please, because she knows that she could let this energy go.
I've never read it like that before.
No, because the Doctor Donna in that scene is very much in the same par as the Doctor. Like she's realizing her own fate at the same time as the Doctor. So I don't agree with that. And so I don't know. That just seems flimsy to me. But I think we have to look past it to get these 3 episodes out, because I do agree that sort of you can't just say white someone's mind and then have a mind kept white for 3 episodes and have her start.
Yeah, they had to do something to be able to just have a couple of episodes with the Doctor and Donna just chilling out. Like I get it, but also it felt a bit cheap.
It did feel cheap. I don't know how to get away from that, because on the other side, it doesn't to me it doesn't lessen Journey's End anymore.
Okay.
Because there was so much time between them, and the impact of Journey's End is monumental, and that's why it was so amazing to see them back together, because I think of the impact of that ending. The binary non-binary thing I think is a bit preachy. It doesn't really fit with the character.
It feels very convenient that Russell just happened to use the word binary back in the day, and he's now able to use that as almost a play on words that ties in with what he wants to talk about in the story.
But when we were introduced to Rose, she's not non-binary, she's trans, and those are different things. And Russell should understand those different things. Yeah. Because I've seen some people say, oh, what they're referring there to is that the Doctor and Donna are 2, and Rose is 1, so it's binary non-binary, as in there's 2 of them, and she's 1. I don't know if that. I don't think that really plays. I just think the whole thing's a bit sort of like over-explaining sci-fi. Let's get back to a story, please.
Yeah. Russell wanted to tell that story and make that point within this episode, I suppose. And I think it just as much as it's an important story to tell, it feels like it just comes across a little bit clunkily. Sort of through the dialogue and the way it's done, I don't think quite works as effectively as it could have done.
And I don't think either of us are saying Rose shouldn't have been in there, because Donna being a mum and Donna like being a mum of a trans child are just absolutely amazing. And so the best sort of role model that you could think of. And I think it really sort of like brought a lot of like to her character and Sylvia and all that sort of like family. They felt real. They didn't feel like someone's family that we saw in 2 episodes and then forgot about. Yeah. They feel like they've really lived. Yeah. So but I just think that ending, because really it should come down to the Doctor and Donna. Like that's it when like sort of like Rose's voice is like what haha funny joke, but then it's like, well, no, it should come down to them. So I think the episode sort of, it's not great when you analyze it like that. But as I say, rewatching it, I really did enjoy it. I've just sliced the whole thing. But
I think it's a fun time where you watch it, but you've got to not think too deeply about it.
Yes, because absolutely.
Then, to be honest with you, that's probably quite a lot of Doctor Who. Is if you analyze it too deeply, you realise none of it really stands up, and it's a bit stupid and nonsense. But that's Doctor Who half the time, and that's okay, and that's fine. It's a fun hour to watch Doctor Who.
I think the story is fantastic. I love the story of the Star Beast generally, like both the sort of like the audio comment and that sort. I think that's a great sort of story, and I love the idea of sort of like Rose making the toys and all of these different elements. They don't come together amazingly, but they work, and the actors deliver them. As well.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a good episode of Doctor Who. I think it's probably on first viewing, it wasn't what we hoped for, because we wanted Day of the Doctor Mark II, and it was nothing like that.
I think also like the first shot being David Tennant standing in a green screen is not a good first shot.
I didn't think it was that terrible, but it was pretty. I thought it was quite telling. I don't know if you saw this, that Rachel Talalay on Twitter said at some point she replied to a tweet going, "I did not direct that scene. That was not me." So they tacked that on afterwards.
The whole Donna bit was tacked on afterwards
that whole 90-second recap thing at the start. Well, I think she said that the Donna shots were like outtakes or cut from the episode or something like that, were then incorporated into that. And then the David Tennant bit was nothing to do with her and was done someone else in front of a green screen. So I do think, I don't know why they felt the need to do that, but.
So is the Donna stuff from the scene with Sylvia, where she's saying sometimes
I think it might be something. I think they must have done
dialogue from that. That's so interesting.
I think they but then in the scene with Sylvia that we actually see, she's not looking directly to camera, is she? Because in the recap, she's like breaking the fourth wall, looking directly at the camera. So did they do a take where they got her breaking the fourth wall for the whole scene, and then maybe did one where she wasn't, and then chose to use that? I don't know, but
that's really interesting. I think so. I think the reason they recap there is because of sort of like the worry that we're going back to a serious story from 2008.
Yeah, they needed something. Yeah,
I mean, like 8-year-old kid will not give a. Do you know what I mean? They are there for the meat, and that's sort of like that adventure. But if you think about it, it's a very introverted thing to do.
Yes.
But at least twice in the episode, the Doctor very clearly explains this whole premise. He says it's Shirley, he says it's Sylvia, and like sort of like you do not. It's not like the lottery thing that's over-explained.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind Donna's part of it. Donna's part of it actually made me quite emotional. Like, I think that's just Catherine Tate's like acting, the music, the writing, that sort of thing all coming together. I think the only thing that needs to happen is the Doctor needs to be shot in close up on the TARDIS. Yeah. Because Catherine Tate is like, even though she's breaking the fourth wall, it's in character. So don't reveal the new TARDIS, just shoot them against a roundel or something like that.
Exactly.
So that it feels in universe. I think that's the only thing, is that it felt very much out of the universe.
Yeah, it was like, why have you chosen to do this here? Even like, could have just got to stand in front of the TARDIS if you didn't want to reveal the inside of it. Just something real, I think, would have been a lot better than a green screen and a pretty dodgy looking green screen CGI thing that just wasn't the best. But it's okay. No. It was fine. And so, well, it's behind me, the TARDIS. Do we like the TARDIS?
I do. I wasn't sure at the time. I thought it looked really clinical. I love the scale of it. I thought that was like, it looks fantastic in that sort of way. I thought the console was too big and like sort of like didn't feel like it had proper things on it. Mm-hmm. And it just looks extremely clinical and like not very much character. The more spare time we spend in it, the more we see it do different things in terms of the lighting. I mean, we saw it do the lighting right at the start, but I don't know, it's really growing on me, especially the console. I think I really love the console. What about you?
And I think it will. I mean, I really like it. As you say, I love that it's massive. Like the TARDIS should be huge because it is bigger on the inside. Why have we? Well, we know why it's always been restricted, but it doesn't need to just be a little bit bigger than the normal one. Like it can be absolutely enormous. So I love that. And I think yes, it looks quite sort of neat and tidy and clinical, as you say. But I feel over time, Shooty will sort of gain stuff in it, as you mentioned about putting a chair in there and stuff like that. So I feel like by the end of his first season, there'll be a load of random other stuff in there as well. Yeah. And
so, did you know that's what the TARDIS was going to look like?
What, as in a leak?
Yeah.
I'd seen a render, the leaked render, probably 9 months earlier. I couldn't really remember it properly. I knew from that I remember thinking it was very big and white was all I could really remember.
Okay.
So I did have some impression of what I thought it was going to be, rather than having no idea at all. What about you? Did you know?
No, I had no idea. So my sort of like policy with leaks is I try and avoid them as much as possible. Apart from the Camden shooting, of which I looked at every single photograph and I watched the video where they spliced it all together.
Did you?
Yeah, I think I did, like ages ago.
Yeah.
I did not. I tried to actively avoid every single leak.
Yeah.
Which I think we should talk about in the Giggle, because I think that does make a perspective on the episode.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that. Yeah.
What did you think of the music on Star Beast?
So it's great to have Murray back. It is cool to have him back, and I've always liked Murray's music, and I like it again. I felt of the 3 specials in the Star Beast, it was the least great. I felt like it was fine. It did its job as an orchestral score. There was the occasional hint of the Doctor's theme in there. There was a bit of Eye on the Doctor for some reason in there. So it's, a bit of nostalgia for fans and stuff. But having I've done a soundtrack video on my YouTube channel for it, so I've heard the whole score to it, and it doesn't feel like there's that many really great bits of music in there that's really catchy or defining or anything in the Star Beast. Whereas I feel like, especially in the Giggle, there's a lot more of that.
Yeah,
it feels like that was the highlight musically, was the Giggle. Wild Blue Yonder feels like Murray Gold doing a second Akinola impression, with all the sort of electronic synthy stuff in there, and then the Giggle is classic Murray Gold, lots of big dramatic orchestral themes and stuff like that. So it was fine, but I don't think it's a classic Murray Gold soundtrack for Star Beast.
I know what you mean. I didn't really pick up on the music too much on the first watch. It was yesterday actually. I really noticed it, and I'm not as into the soundtracks as you. But to me, that Series 2 soundtrack is utterly iconic.
Yes,
almost every single track on it.
Yeah.
It's completely iconic to me, and I do agree that there's not that much of that. But it did really I did really love it at points. Sort of I'm thinking the sort of the Donna music in that sort of intro, isn't that used in Series 4?
Which bit?
Where she's talking to the camera. I don't know.
I don't remember recognizing that piece of music that much. I think there might have been a hint of some of her theme from Series 4 in there.
There's definitely the rumba theme, where in Camden, and that just made me chuckle.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
I think I was noticing it more in the Giggle, and that really made me think about it. So yeah, I was very happy with it. I definitely listened to your YouTube videos, / the official soundtrack when it comes out, in isolation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that 15's theme is going to become the new iconic Murray track, because I think the new theme is an absolute banger for 15. I think it's amazing.
Did the 14th Doctor ever get a theme?
Not that I can tell. Nothing defining. Which, I think is a bit of an odd one and a shame. But there's nothing. There's occasional hints of the classic Doctor's theme from Series 1.
Yeah.
In there at points. There's a little bit of the Doctor Forever thing from Series 3, I think. But it's all kind of on that same original Doctor's theme.
So it's all sort of the 10th Doctor's themes.
Yeah. Essentially, it's just kind of hinting at the 10th Doctor's themes without actually fully playing them, blaring them. And because I don't think we don't have any big "I am the Doctor" moments from the 14th Doctor in these, do we? We don't have him standing up the monster and go, it's different. And apart from that, you don't get that, I think. So I think there's not as much of a moment to put a big dramatic 14 theme in, because you just don't have that moment to really, blare it loud.
That's true. It's making me think about sort of like, I want to talk about the 14th Doctor versus the 10th Doctor, because I think that is symbolically what we've got here is just, they're not that different, like, because they made a massive point of this as a totally different incarnation, and
it's not.
It's not. It is and it's not. I don't feel like there's as much vanity.
No, because he accepted his death as well in the Giggle. Yeah. So that is an obvious difference.
Yeah.
But his character fundamentally through the episode is pretty similar.
Because and I think it is the sort of, it's David Tennant's take on the Doctor.
Yeah.
And that is fine. There were bits which were really odd where he went very RP. And I think there's a couple of neat
you're right.
That.
I was like, what's going on? What's happened to his accent? What's he doing?
Yeah. And
it was so weird.
I can't, like...
Is that an intentional choice, or is it just an accidental thing? Or what?
Someone's got to pick up on that. Like, it's like so it's got to be intentional in some way. But like, that was really odd, and I was like, the 10th Doctor would never talk like that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the changes with those Doctors are, as I said at the top, about masculinity.
Yeah.
And that's more the change. That sort of way. And maybe we should return to this in the Giggle. But I think we were very much sold this is going to be the best Doctor Who ever. The 14th Doctor is going to be totally different. And of course it's not going to be.
Yes.
Because like David Tennant's joke, like, what if I came back and just did a funny accent? I was like, well, you did for a couple of lines. We didn't like it. So
but I feel like, really, if you're bringing back a Doctor, what's the point in bringing back the same actor to play it completely differently and not like a character that you love and remember? Like, that would be a stupid decision, because you're bringing it back for the fans. So you're not going to make him play like an old hermit type Doctor or something like that. You just it'd be the same whoever you brought back, I feel like.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't have a big issue with it. I was thinking, actually no, we'll save it for the Giggle. I was thinking about 14's why 14 is David Tennant and the clothes and all that kind of stuff, which doesn't really have a very good explanation. But anyway, that's for the Giggle.
Okay.
Wild Blue Yonder, let's talk about that, because that was the episode that no one knew anything about. Nothing leaked about it. We all got way too hyped for it.
Yeah.
Was it good at the time, and is it good now?
I think it's better now. I know it was good at the time. It really was. I like the episode. The only time I think I looked at the clock, we were at least 33 minutes in.
Yeah.
And like the pair, like, even though it's like, it's very, as everyone said, it's very sort of like dead space and that sort of claustrophobia.
Yeah.
It does like lick along. It's not slow paced at all. And I really like that. I thought the episode was great. I thought the sort of like the non-things were really freaky. And was the sort of body horror that... Yeah. I was going to say we haven't seen Doctor Who very often, but we have, because Ashad, the Cyberman, is body horror.
Yeah.
So I don't... But this was very... I don't know, maybe because we're desensitized to Cybermen and that sort of thing. This was very much new body horror, and it was freaky.
Yeah. And
that felt nice. I said, as soon as the 10th Doctor came back into the room, I said, that's not the Doctor. I was just like,
I had a feeling, and then about 30 seconds later, I was like, okay, yeah, sure.
And that was and it was at that point you're like, okay, we're doing this episode.
Yeah,
fine, cool. Yeah. I think I love all the story concepts. I think I have no problems at all with the story. I absolutely love the idea of the slow. I think that's fantastic, and the robot was amazing. Yeah, and just that sort of like all these specials. I love the story concepts completely. I think it was literally the promotion that I felt dissatisfied by. Because it was not a groundbreaking episode of Doctor Who. It was fantastic. Yeah, and it did push like David Tennant and Catherine Tate as actors.
Yes,
and I think sometimes you don't sort of like recognize how much they did in that episode. No, it was only watching the Unleashed that I realised, oh yeah, they're not normally in every single scene or having every other line. That's quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's quite a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think technically it was a very good sort of like episode of television that for an academic who can go, oh, that was that was very impressive. But to a general audience, I don't I think the story's more impressive than the technique, and the story's more important than the technique.
Yeah.
Used that way. The only frustration I have with the story is that we do not talk about the fact that the Doctor wiped Donna's mind, sort of like a thing, without consent, and he's guilt about that, and it's the character piece, and it's meant to be sort of like pushing them as actors, having the conversations that they will never have, sort of thing. That is the conversation they need to have. About that time, and how that sort of like, and how everyone gaslit Donna into thinking that she'd had a mental breakdown. It's sort of like giving away money. I mean, sort of like, I think the important thing about giving away money, obviously, like the altruism and being the Doctor, when that she first said about that was lovely. Every time it got repeated was annoying. But the sort of thing of like, that's actually had consequences to her real life, which I don't think we see really. She lives in an incredibly middle class area of London. She seems quite affluent from her house. So I don't think we see the fact that she's struggling. But if she was, and that is sort of the story we're being sold, that they can't afford to keep the house, then that has had a massive detriment to her life, because also I think she, as a person, she felt so much more confident in her sort of travels with the Doctor. So there could have been a narrative where she left the Doctor with her memories, went and worked for Unit, or went and worked for this sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? And felt like a real, like, I think she's had a life taken away from her, and we never talk about that. We just talk about the Doctor and the flux. And it's like, there is so much more interest the other way to me, because Donna tries to say to the Doctor, what's happened since the last saw you? I was like, you can't do that. Like, what's happened is over 10 years worth of television, 4.5 billion years in a confession dial, several 100,000 years on Trenzalore, a few different commissioners pushing Doctor Who in different ways. Do you know what I mean? It's like, let's not do that. That's very, very complicated, and we can't sum that up into a sentence. Go the other way, because you can sum that up. And because I think they did say, it's been 15 years. It's been 15 years for Donna.
Yeah, I was like, don't say it's been 15 years. It's been millions of years for the Doctor.
Yeah.
Like that's a nonsense to say. 15 years makes it sound like such a little amount. Like the Doctor's 920 or something now. It's like, it's just not true.
No, not at all. And it's like, and that's because it's from Donna's perspective, to tell the story from that perspective. That was my only frustration, is that in a character piece we don't examine that character. That's really true. What did you think of the first, the opening scene?
I love it.
Yeah, I think
it's hilarious and brilliant. And I really, really, really hope that Russell goes down the route of having loads of these silly little like changed words that just become a thing. I think that's such a funny thing that they should just do.
Do you think that's happening with, like, for consequence? Like, it's gonna sort of come up in a season finale?
I hope so.
By the Doctor.
I hope so, because I was looking. I saw on Twitter somebody had posted a clip from the Doctor YouTube channel from series. I don't know if you've seen this, from series 7, where the Doctor goes up the Shard on the motorbike. Yeah. And it's the anti-gravity, like anti-gravity something, and they've changed it in the description of the video to anti-mavity. And I just thought, brilliant. That's just great. Like, it's little things, but it's like, I want to make this a thing, like, for however long now. That just Mavity is just a normal word in the Doctor universe, and let's do 2 or 3 other ones, like, all that sort of stuff that I just think is really, really funny. And it can just, I do hope that it's like, it becomes a thing in some way, because then we have sort of, the Doctor like messing up history causes something to come back to bite him or something. I feel like that's a really cool idea. Yeah, I really like that. More. Like, we saw the Doctor interfere with like the creation of the Daleks as well in this Children in Need special. So it's like we've seen a couple of different moments of the Doctor. I know he didn't really change history, I suppose, there, but just interfering in important historical events and then things changing off the back of it could be quite interesting. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't think I thought much of the sort of like consequences of that sort of like continued storytelling at the time. Like, I don't think I picked up when Donna said Mavity twice in the episode. Yeah. But I really like the Douglas Adams style humor. I think it's really very much that. Yeah. And like everyone was saying that was a really odd the scene to put in the episode. No, it wasn't. It was just a fun cold open for the lols.
Oh no, I think it is. I think it is really odd because it has no bearing on the story as
it's
a
nothing to do
whole.
with the story. So that's why I think it's got to have relevance down the line.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think at the time I was thinking, well, why did they put this in? I think it really quickly tells the new viewer what Doctor Who is. You go into the past, change future. You go into the future. Sorry, you go into the past, change time, and then you go to the future and see a spaceship. That is textbook what Doctor Who is. I think also visually, although the episode is incredible, and we should talk more about the visuals, it's very much one note. It's one set. And it's one sort of palette of color, so it gives a completely different sort of like palette color, and just get like I think it balances out the dark tone of the rest of the episode. So I can see why they did it. I didn't like that 2 of our redacted cast are literally in one scene. That was so annoying.
I know, but
what did you think of all the CGI?
So the sets are fantastic, and I love seeing how they did that in Unleash and all of that. I think that's amazing. Like, you know, they basically filmed it. Or they did Underworld, but did it properly. It's kind of the thing, which I just think is brilliant. And the sets themselves look incredible. The CGI sets. I think like some of the CGI of the like messed up not Doctor and not Donna look a little bit ridiculous and not very good, but it's fine because it's just meant to be, you know, it creates the horror aspect, and I think you just have to look past it because it's not perfect. Like when we've got the massive Doctor and Donna's faces and stuff, like, you know, it's very clear CGI, but we just kind of roll with it.
It's really interesting because I actually have the opposite opinion, but you know, like I don't know, I don't think I see bad CGI, especially in character and like sort of veins and that. I thought the environment of that long corridor, it felt like they were in a video game. Like that did not feel real to me at all. And after a while, I didn't mind it. I quite like it when they're sort of like going down the corridor at high speed. I think that's really fun. When they're sort of interacting with it, I quite like it. But when they were first like sort of like when they first walked out, I was like, that's so clearly a green screen. And obviously, I know it's going to be a green screen because like you can't build something like that. Yeah. But it just felt something like unreal about it. And I didn't mind the big Doctor and all that. I thought that was actually quite fun.
Yeah. Okay.
Was it when they're like crawling on their hands? Are they CGI or is it just like false perspective?
I don't know. I don't think we saw that in the Unleashed.
No, because I'd imagine. Well, I imagine if it was Tom Kingsley would have tweeted about it because I'd imagine they would have just put the camera really close to them and superimposed it into the shot. Or something like that.
I don't know. I guess something like that is how they would have done it.
Maybe. But like all the sort of like when they're squished up, I thought that was so grotesque and sort of like I don't know. At that point, I don't question it. Yeah. Because I'm invested in those characters. Yeah. But yeah, I thought the scale was quite good. I mean, they said this is the thing, like sort of like the scale of these episodes is very impressive. It does look beautiful. Yeah. That isn't a new thing.
Yeah.
Like
it wasn't groundbreaking compared to like the last series.
No, not at all. And even like the sort of like Series 11, like when the spaceship crashes in the Ghost Monument, I think it's the most amazing shot, like one of the most amazing shots in Doctor Who ever. The story's not good, but that sort of shot and the like what that shot evoked and the actual fear, I don't think it's ever been replicated. So I think that's a really sort of like important thing that like while we're sort of like in this sort of ecosphere of Frosty Davis is amazing and everything's
terrible.
No, that like visuals was there. Yeah, but that's not taking away that it is good.
So what did you think? I was just thinking about this in both the Star Beast and Wobbly Yonder. Donna basically almost dies, and then in the Giggle, I was kind of expecting that was building up to some sort of consequence, but there wasn't. There wasn't even really any jeopardy in her life. I guess a little bit in the Giggle.
True, Donna does take a back seat in the Giggle. I didn't think.
Why did they do that fake out thing at the end of Wild Blue Yonder if it then ultimately kind of means nothing? And they didn't even really talk about it. They had a quick hug and then, oh, Doctor, are you okay? It was kind of the end of Wild Blue Yonder.
Yeah, it was. I did think that's bloody traumatizing because they don't talk about how the Doctor didn't recognise his own friend.
Yeah.
And like how like sort of like what
such a weird thing to fake out, really make us believe you're about to kill off Donna. Yeah. Why on earth did they not cliffhanger that there though? That was like such a great cliffhanger moment.
Oh my god, I don't think I would have coped with that. Did you believe, like, did you think, oh, she might die in Wild Blood Yonder?
Just for about 10 seconds, I thought,
same.
or I thought this is where the episode's going to end, and then the Doctor's going to have to go back in time to come and save her, or something like that. Like something will happen. That obviously that she wouldn't ultimately die there, but that we'd be left like, not sure about it.
I think I thought you can't kill Tommy Noble on BBC One on primetime television. You just wouldn't be allowed to. And I said that to myself in a, would they sort of like do it like, because I thought, oh my god, are they about to do this?
Yeah.
So I did, but like it did fool me for a second. I didn't like it in the Star Beast. That felt very film tropey, where she was like sort of like in his arms and that's so then the glass came down for no reason. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, all of that just didn't really fit. This fitted to me, and I was absolutely in the moment. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting that they didn't pick up on it. I think Wild Blue Yonder is such its own episode. It's such a sort of like, this is a standard Doctor Who episode.
Yes.
And an amazing standard Doctor Who episode. Here are the stakes, and here is the stakes that we face every single episode.
Yes.
To the extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like Wild Blue Yonder could absolutely be a series 4 episode.
Yeah.
Whereas the others are very of their of now. It
yeah.
feels like Wild Blue Yonder could just slot into series 4 almost no problem.
Yeah, completely. And so I don't know. I think it's right. And I think they did balance it right, because these episodes do feature like, so done a sort of concern about a family and that sort of like realism. And I think she has to take a backseat in the next episode. But I just felt so resolved by the Giggle, and sort of like I thought that was such a beautiful ending for those characters, and I didn't feel sort of like underserved in any way.
Yeah.
I haven't thought though about the 2 deaths. I think it's the first one that annoyed me. If the first one wasn't there, I wouldn't have any problem whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why.
It just felt like we've done 2 fake out deaths. Surely that means there's going to be an actual death in the last episode, and then it's not. But
I think also the Meep never felt like a threat, because when it's sort of destroying London and then just doesn't, like, that's just, do you know what I mean? It removes everything from that threat. So I don't think I really
that's fair.
Felt that Donna was going to die in that moment. Maybe I did. I don't know. No, I definitely did. Can't remember. Yeah.
Well, let's get to the Giggle then, because I feel like we're one of the few people, because most people have said like the Giggle is their least favorite of the 3, but I feel like the Giggle was my favorite of the 3.
Absolutely, hands down.
So interested why so many people seem to quite dislike that. I guess it's the bigeneration stuff, but actually, first time watching the Giggle, the first like 35 minutes, the whole kind of main Toymaker storyline, I was just absolutely captivated the whole way through. It was like running at an absolute pace, but it was just so exciting, and the whole like in the Toymaker's realm. And anything can happen. There's no laws. Nothing makes any sense. I just think that sort of Doctor Who storytelling is just fascinating, because you're like, literally anything can happen right now.
Yeah, and I think what makes it like that is that what I do about the Toymaker is like that speech he has to the Doctor. They're going to be like, that I'm not about good and bad, or sort of like these sort of like evil and that sort of like. It's just a game of chance, and there is either to win or to lose. And I think that just when you really embrace that. It just becomes like it's a whole different type of storytelling, and there is no way to reason with him. So everything coming down to chance, I absolutely loved, because you're sort of taking away the Doctor's like main weapon as it is like his brain and that sort of thing. You don't know what's going to happen. You genuinely don't know where that story's going to go.
Yeah.
And I think that is the pace. I think Neil Patrick Harris was amazing.
Oh yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. He was the perfect casting for the Toymaker, completely.
Yeah. Yeah, and like all the different sort of like characterizations. I thought it was interesting that the thing of him being a puppet master was in the trailer.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the Doctor becoming the puppet. I don't know if everyone thought that when like the wires go up. I thought it was
no, I didn't think that, but
I did. I thought like those wires were attached to the Doctor, not to the man from the television.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't think. I stopped thinking there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a really good story, and as you say, the villain was such a unique villain. We've only seen him once in Doctor Who before, and he, as you say, he's not someone who's about good or evil. So it just gives such a different dynamic to a Doctor Who story that's not just there's this bad guy who's bad and wants to kill everybody, and we've got to defeat him. It's like so different to that, and almost the Doctor realizing this is a threat that he can't really defeat, and or not in a conventional way, because it's not just an enemy you can just kill with, you know, by being clever or something. You have to play a game with him and beat him at a game and stuff. Like all of that, I think it's just, as you say, if you buy into that, that's a really interesting concept, and presented so many different like opportunities to do stuff. And in some ways, I just hope they haven't actually killed the Toymaker off, because I'm like, he's such an interesting character. Why would you just put him after one episode?
Oh, I don't think they would have done. I mean, in talking about his legions are coming, I'm hoping that's going to be picked up.
It's got to be. It's got to be. And the mysterious person that he couldn't defeat at a game or something. That's very interesting.
Yes, that's me beating Moose boss, I think. Whoever
it makes sense. Those are the same. But I have no idea what that's going to be.
But like when it was the first Doctor, didn't the Toymaker get banished into his own realm or whatever? Then and sort of like, do you know what I mean? So I think there's like, yes, he's banished him for all existence, but you know. Just have another line that says
he'll just be the master again.
And that's completely fine. But I love that sort of general story and the richness of going back sort of like to the 1920s. I don't know really I don't understand, does the Giggle come from the Toymaker possessing the toy? Is that what we're meant to believe? Like, I don't really understand. What that is.
I think it's something like that, which then he's been able to impress into everybody's brains and activate when they put that satellite up in the sky or something like that. And that wasn't the Archangel network.
No, I liked the reference to Archangel. That's
something like that, yeah.
That's like, okay, I'll put this magic thing into people's brains, but I will wait for a satellite to appear in 100 years' time. You know, it doesn't really fit together. But there's a richness to that kind of storytelling about sort of like people being affected, like sort of like, and it's not Canada, South America, these big like sort of, do you know what I mean? All around the world.
Yes, and there was no big title graphic like Chibnall era, was there?
Well, no, there were. It just say like Soho 1925. Today, and I don't think that today was necessary. But like, it didn't feel that sort of like all around the world. But just focusing on that level shop and those like characters and that sort of thing, I thought it just gave it a richness. That I quite liked, even if it doesn't really make sense. All the sort of like, oh, we're looking for a time trace from 1925 or whatever. I think this is again the episode could have been so much longer because the Giggle brings about the end of the world, but we don't really see the end of the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I feel like Russell has always been massive on showing like real life people and how the end of the universe or the aliens is affecting their lives. And we don't really see any, apart from that scene at the very start of the episode with that bloke in the road, like we don't see any normal people after that scene that are being affected by the Giggle and what's going on at all, which I think just for Russell, that's really surprising because I'm so used to him making that a big part of the story.
I think if we had cut back to it, I think why we're doing this, we never actually saw anyone properly affected. But it does feel an interesting mission. And I've just thought, actually, I do understand why they've not made these episodes 90 minutes. Because if you said, oh, we're going to do 3 90-minute Doctor Who episodes, like Sherlock series, I think it doesn't feel as approachable to a new or younger viewer that isn't already really interested in that kind of fiction. Like, do you know what I mean? To a general audience, that's quite a sort of like long, sort of slow feeling.
That's true.
Selling. So I do understand why they didn't do that. What did you think of Mel?
I like that she is just there. They do make a deal out of it, but they don't make a huge deal out of it. And she's just a part of the story. And she works for Unit. She's a scientific advisor. To me, controversial, I feel like she put on a better performance than Sophie Aldred and Janet Fielding did in Power of the Doctor.
No, she does, I agree.
I think as like just an actress performing in a role, I felt like it was a lot more natural and fitted into the story, whereas Power of the Doctor felt like, hello, look at these two people you remember from the 80s, aren't they cool? But then they weren't actually that great or interesting as characters and didn't have that much to do apart from a few little emotional moments with the Doctor. So I feel like I enjoyed Mel more in this story. You can kind of go, it's very random that Mel's the person stood next to the Doctor by generating. Like, that is a bit just like... But I love that. Just went one day, wouldn't it be hilarious if it was Mel? Why not Mel? We love Mel. Let's get her back. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just a bit random.
I think it's such a clever decision, though, in terms of, like, you've hit the nail on the head. She's such an amazing actor.
Yeah,
like,
she really is.
I think she brings so much to that role that's not just sort of like, oh, I was in it in the 80s.
Yeah.
and she's going to have a continued presence going forward.
Yeah.
And so make her absolutely. She does feel around the character to fit in that bigeneration, but if you're going to make her a recurring character for the new series, absolutely put her front and center that sort of way.
Yeah.
So I met Bonnie Langford like last month. I went to see Stephen Sondheim's Old Friends, and I stage doored. And I was like, oh, I'm a massive Doctor Who fan. And she's like, oh, I'm in the new series. I was like, well, we see you before the new series. And she was like, I was like, any chance of seeing it? Because I hadn't seen the leak.
Yeah.
But obviously, the photo when they announced Bonnie Langford for series 14 is of the unit base. Yeah. And you're like, that's clear. And even if they're not reusing that set, it's the bangle on her arm that like everyone had in the trailer. So you're like, okay, you're gonna be there. And then they released the photos where she's blurred out in the background.
I know, it was hilarious.
So it's like, you're definitely there.
Yeah.
But she was very tight-lipped. She was very lovely, but quite tight-lipped about it.
That's good. I find the weirdest thing though for me is that they haven't actually almost promoted the fact that she's back at all. I don't think there's been a single like article, tweet, video, anything really going, look, Mel's back, isn't this great?
It felt very odd on the day. There was no sort of like tweet about that sort of thing. It felt really odd on the day, and it felt really odd that it wasn't in Doctor Who Unleashed. But it was in the behind. No, but she was in the behind the scenes on YouTube.
Yeah.
So that felt very strange.
Maybe they'll make a bigger deal out of it when she comes back in series 14 because it was the whole new Doctor thing. I guess that kind of took over. I think so maybe that'll be a bigger thing in the next series.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope that's fine. Because they have made a big thing of her coming back generally. But that was really only to Doctor Who fans, I think, or people who had an invested interest anyway.
Yeah. But then that kind of is all that it really matters. Like, who's watching that as a casual fan and going, oh, Sabalon Glitz, cool. Like, they got no idea what all that nonsense is, have they?
No, but I think it sort of just shows, like, oh, this is like... I think you get from that she's been in space, she's lived in space, and now she lives on Earth. And that's kind of cool.
Yes.
Like, that's sort of like traveling around. I didn't get why the Giggle didn't affect her and Donna because Kate Stewart's travelled in the TARDIS.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a very clear explanation that doesn't have a plot hole in it there. That was pretty,
if that bangle, the Giggle wasn't invented by Mr. Smith, was it? I was going to say, is it linked to how this whatever the computer is going to be like Mr. Smith and the end of Sojourner Adventures Series 1? Yeah, that thing. Yeah,
it was hilarious. The fact he was just there and there was no like comment.
I love that.
A part of the story. It was great. Honestly, it was so good. Rather than what the frick's that robot doing here? It was just
Is that quite Marvel? I don't know if you watch like a lot of Marvel.
Really watch Marvel.
No,
I'm not.
I wondered if that was a sort of Marvel-y sort of thing, because obviously like the Unit Tower is like a rip-off apparently of some sort of Marvel tower.
Yeah. But I love there is a Unit Tower and a Unit base, and a set of characters that are part of Unit again. I feel like that's a really good thing for the show. Yeah, and to have like a grounded thing to come to when we have Earth-based stories, have Unit and those recognizable characters involved in that story rather than generic Unit scientific advisor number 57 or something like.
Yes,
I think that's so much better.
I am sad that Osgood is no longer around.
I do agree with that though. Yeah, very true.
I think they were amazing.
Yes.
As a character, is there two of them or what? There's one now, isn't there? Yeah, she was amazing as a character. And I do like Shirley. I really like Shirley, but I just like it just must feel really shit for Ingrid Oliver being like, I've been replaced now. And I don't think it's anything she's done wrong. And
I don't feel like Shirley's got any real great character yet. Maybe she'll get that more down the line, but she's just kind of, as much as we've got a name and a face to her now, she is just another Unit scientific advisor that doesn't really have anything else about them yet.
They're quite sort of they don't like the Doctor. They have quite a lot of attitude towards the Doctor, which is interesting and different. I'm not sure that's a massive characterization. That's just let's make it different to what it was before.
Yeah.
And I don't think I think you can have Shirley and Osgood there. I think that's quite fun.
Shall we talk about the bigeneration? I feel like we've dodged that until now, but that's kind of like the key thing that happened in the Giggle more than anything else. So do you like it?
Yeah, I do. I really do. Cool. I have a perspective of I did not see. No, I did. I think I did see the leak, or I scrolled past it very quickly.
Yes,
but like a year ago or more. Like, so do you know what I mean? And I think you've hinted at it, and I've been like, do not tell me anything.
Yeah, I didn't mean to give it away. If I did, apologies.
No, you didn't. No,
I just said I knew that there was leaks doing the rounds. more so than else.
But like when it was happening, that was not in my head at all. I thought he was just going to turn into Shooty, and Shooty would be the new Doctor. Because I don't think I even clocked Neil Patrick Harris's line, "Oh, I battled with the first Doctor, now I've done this Doctor, my third should be with the next Doctor." I don't think I even had that.
Oh, right.
Like, oh my God, it's happening now, instead of at the end of the episode. Yeah. And when he was like, Paul, I was sort of like, is he sort of like going to be sort of like a Jack in the Box, where like they pull down on his answer and they're like sort of like, do you know what I mean? I did not expect Shooty to appear at all in that moment. I love it because everything about this Doctor is like one-off sort of thing, and everything about these sort of episodes feels very sort of special and one-off. That sort of way. So I'm very happy with that. Everyone's been like, when does like David Tennant regenerate though?
I don't think that's very complicated though.
Well, I don't know, because I don't know if I sort of understood it, because like they were sort of saying that Shooty's been alive because he has that line about sort of like David Tennant's Doctor, like really like build putting himself back together and sort of recovering. Because he's done that recovery, Shooty now doesn't need to do that recovery. So when does that recovery happen? When does he actually turn into Shooty? And so I don't know if that means that the Doctor has got to regenerate into Shooty again. I don't know. I don't really understand that.
My headcanon, as much as I understand it, because as you say, in the story, they say that time has passed between 14 we see in this episode and Shooty, because he says there's been that time to recover. So I still think when we see Shooty, that is the first time Shooty has existed as the Doctor.
Right, okay, yeah.
That 14 lives on for however many years, and then he regenerates, and probably like physically, if you looked at it, he'd regenerate into nothingness, because he's regenerating back in time into that point where 15 comes out of 14.
Okay, yeah.
Like almost in there's like there's another half of that regeneration that we're not seeing, which is older 14 that's disappearing for good, and 15 popping out. That's my head canon that I think gives that time for him to recover, but then also Shooty being Shooty for the first time in that moment in the bigeneration. Then.
I think I'm quite happy.
But I think it'd be nonsensical for 14 to just regenerate into random different people and a whole split timeline. I don't think that's not good for the show. I don't see anything good about doing that.
I think the people who are saying like, "Oh, this has been done so that David Tennant can come back and do a spin-off series," are deluded.
He's not going to come. The reason there's 3 specials is because that's all they could manage to do. So he's not going to come back and do an 8-episode spin-off series. There is no chance that's happening.
But I really don't have a problem with it, because it's science fiction, and I sort of like, I like the vibe of the two of them together. It's very much handing on the baton, that sort of thing. And I totally understand why that was done. I mean, I don't know if people. I did have a problem with it. I had a problem with like David Tennant's Doctor being the next Doctor, like Power of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted Jodie to regenerate into Shooty.
Yes.
And not have like a straight white man in the middle of that sort of like. Now we've been through it, I don't think I have that problem. No. Because although it is that's not really the story that we're playing. Yeah. And there was a reason. Like David Tennant coming back was absolutely an amazing thing. Yes. And I would sort of like, and I'm sure had the 60th anniversary being Shooty's first series, that would have been amazing too. But it's just a golden gem that we got this in addition to that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't have that problem anymore. What is the controversial thing about regeneration?
Well, I feel like the thing that people are most, and personally I'm most annoyed about, if it's true, is Russell saying in the commentary that it also happened to every Doctor ever.
Oh, right.
Because pre the episode, he said was it Doctor Who magazine or somewhere, he said, you wait and see, watch the commentary after the episode, because it will change your whole understanding of the Doctor Who universe. Everything is different by what I explain in the commentary, which firstly is a dumb way to change everything in the Doctor Who universe. And secondly, the actual thing basically going, so everybody in that moment, every single Doctor's bi-generated and split. And so you've got John Pertwee running around still after he's generated, and Tom Baker and whatever. And I'm like, that's a terrible idea.
So
I think that's rubbish, because it spoils so many Doctors have their arc towards them regenerating, and them just waking up 5 minutes later. Oh, cool. Well, I dealt with the fact I'm going to have to regenerate, but now I'm still the Doctor. Okay, cool. Just think that spoils it.
I told you before that in my head canon, all the Doctors like keep on traveling the universe after they regenerate.
Okay.
So the 5 Doctors to me is completely set after all of those Doctors have regenerated.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I've always been quite happy with that. That's sort of like that's in my head how it works. Yeah. I do not give I don't care about Rusty Davis saying on the commentary about the Doctor. So I don't think it happened all in that moment.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Is sort of it just like sort of like ruin it. But I think when I say the Doctors are like bubbling around, so like sort of in the universe, they're very much like afterlife or after images. Do you know what I mean? I think it's that sort of thing of holding on to being what the Doctor is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the Doctor's traveling, or like the Doctor's outside of time and space, so they are sort of like always present. They are sort of like present after their regeneration in some way. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of infinite. I don't have a problem with that, but I don't think it needs explaining. And if it's explained on the commentary, I don't think it matters.
And his whole thing about, almost like everything is canon, nothing is canon. You want the Timeless Child to be canon, great. You want the Doctor to be half human to be canon, great. You go for it, kind of vibe. It was almost like he was intentionally trying to muddy the waters more than ever to kind of appease everybody, is what it kind of felt like in the explanations about it. But all of it was not what we saw in the episode.
No.
Like, none of that actually happened in the story.
Apparently the line of the Toymaker saying like sort of like, I made a jigsaw puzzle out of your life.
Yeah, that's
reference.
Let us just rewrite anything we like.
Yeah, but it's not. That's just a good line. That's a good line of dialogue. You can take it as either a good line of dialogue or this means everything.
Yeah. I do think it's an element of just Russell just almost changing his opinion, because he probably wrote the Giggle like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that commentary was recorded in October. So he's had almost 2 years to ponder what he's done, and probably changed his mind and changed his headcanon in that, his thought about it in that time. And like Tales of the TARDIS as well is that whole like memory TARDIS idea. That again was written way after this idea, but almost fits in with the whole all the Doctors bigenerate so they can be in their memory TARDISes and stuff like that. So I just think his sort of opinion is like changing over time, and we've just seen that play out in a weird way.
And if it was important, it would be in the episode.
Yes.
And it's that sort of thing of sort of like using these things to give it an opinion or over explain where it's just not necessary.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no problem with Tales of the TARDIS. I have no problem that Peter Davison looks older in Time Crash. I don't need these things explained to me. I'm just like sort of like, so it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me because I just won't sort of, I'm like, oh, well, that's what that person said. I will carry on sort of like with my own idea. Not like, I'm gonna put my charger in. Sorry, not in a way of ignorance, but just a way of I'm not sure that matters so much. Or
I think the only other thing that people were kind of annoyed was, which I think has been the case for a while, the feeling that David Tennant's Doctor is more important than the other Doctors, because we give him that happy ending on screen and he gets paired off with Donna. Is Donna now the most important companion because they get to be paired off together?
That's
and all that kind of thing. Because. Why isn't chosen Donna? Why doesn't it be with Yaz or with Clara? Is a bit more difficult, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's.
I mean, because Catherine takes a better actor than anyone on the screen, to be honest, in my opinion. I hadn't thought about it in terms of importance.
Yeah, I'm not too fussed about it, but I get why some people would be annoyed.
I absolutely love that last scene. I thought that was such incredible writing because it's not forever. I don't believe that Doctor is there for more than 5 minutes, really.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a happy ending, and it's just like sort of a happy moment where they both feel so at peace and so resolved. And you know that's not going to last forever. But even just having this moment just felt beautiful. And I was really emotional. Like, it really got to me.
When
I first watched it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's about sort of like David Tennant being the most important Doctor, but like, as I said, this is the first male Doctor since sort of like, well, the first male Doctor where the writer who writes about gender since 2010, sort of like, do you know what I mean? I think it's very much in tune with where the show is at. The Doctor having destroyed half the universe in flux and that sort of thing.
And do you think it was good that was addressed? Like the flux and the Timeless Child stuff was kind of addressed in these specials?
Absolutely, but like I didn't need it to be addressed any more so than what it is.
Yeah,
because I've never had a problem with the flux all the time. This child. I mean, there's semantic problems, but like the idea that anyone could be the Doctor, well, we don't know where the Doctor's from, this sort of thing. We don't really know why it destroyed half the universe. All of Doctor Who is about mystery and that sort of thing. I thought, I don't know, it just feel a bit of an omission watching it for the second time that none of the 13's companions are included in the. Well, that's all right then. But
well, that's because none of them died.
It's true.
I think it does feel jarring though. I agree with you, because you go, oh look, I remember that one. Oh, I remember that one. Oh, I remember that one. Oh wait, wasn't there some others at some point that we just ignored? It just had to be the whole Chibnall era. But as we say, Chibnall did not even try and kill off any of his companions. So
that's true. You could have had Rory, like several different Rorys, and he's chopping. They all died in this all this sort of thing. I don't know.
I mean, that was a really good scene. I really enjoyed that film.
I love that scene.
It's great to see them all again. Just have that little bit of nostalgia in there, you know.
Yeah.
In a effective way.
Yeah, I don't mind the happy. I really love the happy ending. I think what I didn't like at the time was this idea that the Doctor could be without the TARDIS, and the Doctor should stop running around, because that is fundamentally what the character is.
Yes. Yeah. And it only worked with the old David Tennant because it was a human version of the Doctor when he got paired off with Rose without a TARDIS, but that was actually a human rather than the Doctor. And
this is why I think I don't think he's there for more than 5 minutes. It's like that sort of restlessness is the character, and I don't think the scene contradicts that either. It does. It goes near it. It's when in the TARDIS, Donna's sort of the Doctor sort of being like, Donna and Shooty are like, oh, maybe you shouldn't like leave this TARDIS or whatever, or let Shooty have the TARDIS. Like, no, you can't go take the TARDIS away from the Doctor. That would absolutely be out of character. Yeah. Although that's slightly what they did with John Purvis, so I don't know.
That's true.
But
do you now? The one thing I did think about is what happens when we have alien invasions on Earth in the future, or when we turn up and meet Mel, and then Shooty's like, "Well, what's 14th? What's my old mate doing now then?" And
I think he left. I think he just went off, because this is the thing. All the Doctors are all over time and space. So like, why doesn't any one of them, like all 14 of them, come to every single alien invasion?
That's why it doesn't. You kind of have to just not think about that, because logically, any of them could turn up to any alien invasion because they've got a time machine, but they never do, because it doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
You just accept it doesn't really make sense and just go with it, don't you?
I think it is very much about that moment, and the piece that the Doctor has is about having Donna back, and it's just about friendship. Yeah. And it's as simple as that. Yeah. Yeah. But I think it just made me feel like, oh my god, we were so lucky to have these three back. Like, just I was just like, this is so fun. I don't know if I really appreciated that watching the Star of the East and the Wobbly Yonder. And then the end of the Giggle, I was just, oh my god, they are magic together on screen. Yeah, and we may not see them again, or not for a very long time. I don't think we'll see Donna again. No. Or I don't want to. Okay. That's a good ending. Yeah. Yeah, that is a perfect ending. I don't want to see her be a unit operative. The only way I'd be interested in seeing her as Rose's mum. Yeah. But I don't really want it to just be that. Mm. But then what do we think about, because Russell's basically said Rose is going to come back again. Yeah. Which feels quite weird if we're just going to have her and none of the family. I'd quite like Jacqueline King to come back with that. I think that'd be quite. I think there's a way to do it. See, before the specials, I think we knew that she was coming back. Like they said that she's going to be in the finale of series 14. So I was like, right, they got to wipe Donna's memory again at the end, to sort of like. So I was really fixated over. There's got to be a reason why Donna doesn't end up traveling in the TARDIS forever. Mm. Like, and people were saying to me, "Oh, it's because she's a mum and she's got a family." I was like, that is not enough of a reason to me, because like. It's a time machine. She could just go back the next day. True. Theoretically, it never happens, but theoretically, she could. And I just think, like, sort of, like, she loved that life so much that, like, you wouldn't be able to say no. Yeah. I didn't have that problem when I watched it, because it is that sort of, I don't know. She does sort of make that decision not to go in the TARDIS again. She does sort of seem resolved, but I think because she's got the Doctor there, and I think exactly, she wants to just be with the Doctor, really, doesn't she? Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah, you're completely right. It's not about monsters and aliens and that. It's just being with the Doctor. Yeah. And I think it's really interesting thinking what she would be like when that Doctor leaves. Mm. I don't know. Now you say, now I understand what you mean. How could you bring back Rose without Donna? I don't know. Well, we're going to, because Catherine Tate's not going to appear again next year, is she? So that's not going to happen. So, and I wouldn't want it to be just cameos in the background. Yeah, it would just feel like a waste, or like, let's do it properly or not at all. But I do like this I do like the established sort of like the Doctor's pockets of people. Yeah. And I think Rusty Davies has always been far more successful at that than other writers. Yeah. Yeah, so I do like the idea of coming back. I think that's quite fresh.
And I think these specials have also reminded me of Russell's like writing and just his approach to Doctor Who that is actually quite different to Moffat and Chibnall, I feel like. Because he almost is like, he's not as like hard a sci-fi writer. It's probably the best way to describe it. He's much more like fairy tale, wave a wand type. You know, it doesn't really matter how much sense it makes. It's much more about the characters and their relationships than about telling a complicated sci-fi story like Moffat would have done.
I think it is about characters and relationships. I'm not sure I'd describe it as fairy tale, but I'm really interested because I think it is going into fairy tale. I think because you see, like, series 1 to 4 is very much like kitchen sink drama and sort of had like real people being affected, and then series 5 goes massively into making Doctor Who fairy tale again.
Yes.
And everything about Christmas feels quite fairy tale-y, like a baby being left on a church shit on Christmas Eve or whatever. Goblins and these sort of like fantasy creatures. So it's really interesting actually to see what this new era is going to be like. I did feel with the Giggle that was 100% the writing, Russell's writing, that I didn't feel like was in the other episodes. I don't know. Maybe because I felt like the repeated lottery stuff was quite like sort of like boring, or sort of like it sort of, because it repeated so much, it felt stilted. When you've got a Giggle, when you've got like Trinity Wells,
yes,
and it's being like Piers Morgan, it's amazing. That's Russell's writing right there. That is absolutely
100%. It's really good. Yeah.
I felt very much that things had come back in that one. I think in when I was watching the first two, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure this new era of Doctor Who is going to be for me. But I think that was more about anticipation of what I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's so, I've said to you, like, our view of what Doctor Who is has been so sort of like weirded out in the last couple of years, where we've just had odd episodes here and there, instead of actually a series of Doctor Who and like a story of the week as well.
Yes. I'm so ready for that again. Like, it's literally been 4 years since a normal series of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So like, I'm so ready to just have an episode every week for a few weeks with a new monster and just more classic Doctor Who almost, but a new style of it, a new era of it, but more what we're used to from a classic Doctor Who series. I feel like there's been just weird missing.
What did you think of Shooty and the Giggle?
I loved him. I think it's great that we've got a Doctor who's just the Doctor from the start, rather than let's put him in a bed for an episode or post-regeneration trauma for an episode. Those were cool ideas, but we've done those. So I think it's fine that we just have him ready for action immediately. It feels like he's in control. He's the Doctor. He's almost the more got it all together Doctor than 14 by the end of that episode as well, which I really like, and gives us that point to be able to go off on adventures without too much baggage and being weighed down by past stuff. Of course, there'll be new stuff to weigh him down in the future, like we see him crying in the Christmas special. So we know there's going to be emotional stuff going on. But I just think he really had such an energy in that episode. Even in those few minutes we saw, just the energy to the role that he brings, that excitement, that kind of wide-eyed enthusiasm. I feel like we saw from him as the Doctor in there, that just gives me so much excitement and confidence for what's to come with the new era. I just think it's going to be Doctor Who that's just really high energy and fun and exciting, and he's going to be like leading all of that and bringing all of that. I did see some people be like, does having him and with David Tennant in the same episode undermine it and undermine his Doctor, because we've still got 14 there? And I don't think it does, really. I can see why people would say that, but I look at it more as, normally in a regen story you get 30 seconds of them at the end of an episode, whereas we got 15 minutes of him, and that was so much better and more exciting. We got to see more of him.
And I think he does steal the show in those 15 minutes as well. He completely and it is very, I think it's very meta how he like sort of tells David Tennant to get lost. Yes. And like out of the TARDIS, and that is incredibly meta, but it's quite fun as well. And I do like that passing of the baton. I think it has so much energy, and like when he was like whacking the TARDIS with a hammer, I was in like pieces just laughing. Like, I just think he's so much fun. And then like there's the scene at the end where he's talking to the Doctor in TARDIS, and it very much felt like an audition for Doctor Who fans. Like, sort of like, here's Adric, River Songs, Rose.
Marvick Chen.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a bizarre scene, but I was like, do we need to dump all these continuity references in here?
I was like, this
for the fans.
Literally, I thought this is very much just for us to reassure us. And then I watched it again last night. I was like, actually, he's really like sort of like, he's very emotive. and he brings a lot of power with his performance, and that's something which I've only seen shooting in Sex Education where he plays a 16-year-old.
Yes.
And sort of like, and do you know what I mean? And sort of like that, I was so excited to see what his Doctor would be like, because I just didn't know what like he would be like, that sort of way. But I love the energy. I think it's so fresh. I'm very excited for Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, so what do we expect from Christmas then? What we've seen the Goblin song. It's terrible, but
I'm not a fan of the Goblin song. I think it's
hilarious, but I don't think it's very good.
No, I just don't think the lyrics are good. I think the problem that we're in now, if there is a problem, is that we're in an echo chamber where Rusty Davis is God. And because personally, I'd like to think if he had notes on those lyrics, and was like, do you know what? He's not a songwriter.
Yeah.
As far as I know, apologies if I've got that wrong.
No, I don't think he is. No.
But that's what I feel like from those lyrics, and I think at that point you say you give that to someone who is a songwriter or writes lyrics. Yeah. That sort of way, because they're fine. They're sort of fine, but they're not great, and they do need a lot of revision. That's all. And there's a few things where I'm like, I hope people are really like questioning what he's writing, not in a bad way, but just in a sort of like development way, in that a team of people makes everything better. If you just have people saying yes to you all the time, that is not a good thing for creativity. Yeah, you do worry that Russell's got almost so much control that he just can write anything and it gets made. But I'm very excited for the special show. I feel like I can't remember if it said at SFX magazine. It feels very much like the start of Damaged Goods, Russell's Virgin New Adventures novel. Oh, yeah, I think I read a little bit about that, which I haven't read the original novel. I'll listen to the audio again. But I generally quite like the story of it, so I really like that sort of reference. I don't mind goblins. I don't really care about goblins, but I don't think the story's really going to be about that. The scale looks good, like the pirate ship in the sky looks really fun. Oh yeah, looks amazing. I'm more excited for the Doctor and Ruby. Yeah, it's about the Doctor and Ruby. That's what the story is, isn't it? Yeah, I'm more excited for that and for the trailer for the next series. Which I know. I was thinking about that. Like, come on, bring us a series what's two vibes. End of Christmas Invasion. Let's get excited for series 2 kind of thing, isn't it? It's like just seeing all those little shots of stuff. I really hope they do it, and it's going to be the series has been in the can since July. Surely they've got a trailer together for it. You would have thought. Oh, they must do. Must have it. So did a 60th trailer over a year in advance. I'm sure they'll do a trailer for season 1. It's quite exciting because they've made a big deal of how much bigger the promo is going to be for series 1. Yes. Than the 60th. Yeah. That's quite exciting. Yeah, I know. It feels. Don't know what that will mean. Do you think it's going to be a January launch or a Easter launch or a? Well, somebody like Jane Tranter said May in an interview. No, surely not. But I don't understand why that makes any sense. I agree with you. To me, it's not going to be January. I think it's going to be Easter, would be my prediction. But I keep hearing May as the rumored date from something like that, like an interview or something where someone said that. But that just seems completely random. I mean, in the sort of old tradition of terrestrial television, that would make no sense. Yes. As the summer. Yeah. I'm sure they're not going to drop it all at once. They would have done that with the 60th if they were going to drop everything at once. Yeah, and that's true. Yeah, so. I really can't see that. See, I even think Easter's a bit late because if you go Easter, you end up in summer. But I think that's more because it used to start in April, end in June or July. But there's 8 episodes now instead of 13. Yes. So you don't have that much of a problem. Mm-hmm. I quite liked the 60th being in autumn actually. I really felt like that was such comfort. Yeah, Doctor Who, watching Doctor Who when it's dark is just better. Yeah, and when Donna was like, "Oh, and now the days are drawing in," and I was just like, "Oh my god, yes, comfort Doctor Who in winter." Yeah. I do think it sits so well, but I also don't want to wait. We're not going to get that. No, I don't. Well, I don't want to wait a year. Well, no, and I think at least we're going to get a consistent airing plan for the next few years. They're already halfway through season 2. Which I think is insane. That they're getting that far ahead on it is so much better than we're used to with Doctor Who. Well, it is as long as it's not the echo chamber, as I say.
Yeah, I guess that will be the kind of not weird thing, but like with season 2, there won't be any element of it being impacted by audience feedback. Not that shows necessarily should be, but like
No.
they've made season 2 before anybody's seen season 1, so whatever decisions are made will be purely made from behind the scenes, the production team on what to do. Which I just wonder how different season 1 and season 2 will feel, because they've been made so close together and without an airing sort of anything beforehand. And then after a big gap in a season airing, when they make season 3 and maybe 4, will those then feel very, very different to the first two, because they'll have had that period of time? I'm really interested if it'll almost feel like part 1 and part 2 for seasons 1 and 2, and then it'll be a whole new thing for season 3. I don't know, but
it feels very disconnected in terms of when it's made to when it's TX. That I just feel like
it feels a long time.
If I was David Tennant and Catherine Tate filming the 60th anniversary, you told me this was not going to be on television for a year and a half.
Yeah,
I think I'd feel much less pressure.
Yeah,
I don't know that, but like, you know what I mean? It takes the pressure because it would feel sort of not real in a way.
Yeah, and it would almost feel weird when it actually airs, because it'll feel like such old news for that. Like, wow, we did this ages ago. It's finally on telly. What, we're promoting this? I can't even remember what I did like so long ago. I mean, so my question to you: do you think that Shooty's going to do more than 3 seasons?
I really don't know.
Do you think he'll do more than these 2? Do you think he'll finish up after the second one?
Oh, I hope he does more than 2. I get the sense that I mean, I just get the sense from what is in the press, which is again propaganda, like sort of like just pushed out by the publicity team, that he loves it, and sort of everyone says, "Oh, he'll probably stay for longer."
Yeah.
Which I would love, as long as he's good. And like, we've only seen 15 minutes of him, but I'm sure he will be.
Yeah,
but you know, it's very difficult to judge on just those 15 minutes.
Yeah.
There was a really interesting article. Was it in GQ magazine? They did a really like long form interview where he said that he like really enjoyed it, but it was extremely difficult and sort of intense.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's a very realistic sort of like.
Yeah.
I think that, like, nobody can do this role forever, or sort of like, you know what I mean? It's not a long form thing like that, but they're clearly investing in him, and I think they should. It doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I really can't. But all the Doctors have done 3 seasons.
That's the problem, the 3-season rule, which is just a bit of a weird one. And I mean, I'm kind of inclined to think if they're going to they're basically done 2 seasons back to back with like a couple of months break in the middle. So essentially like 18 months solid filming of 2 seasons, then have like nearly a year off and then come back and do 2 more maybe, and do it in the same way. I don't know, give that big break in between. He can go and do something else if he wants to while they do post on season 2 and that kind of thing, because not until like June 2025 are we going to be without an episode of Doctor Who filmed, if you know what I mean. Like, season 3 is not going to wait till 2026, so they could start filming it in 25, no problem. Like, there's easily a year to leave as a gap there, and then that's where maybe they slot in a filming of a spin-off or something. Which would be quite cool. I mean, do you think this Sea Devils one is a thing?
So I only heard of the Sea Devils one from your podcast.
But because there was a Daily Mirror article about it. And there's a production company set up by Bad Wolf called like the war between the land and sea or something.
Oh God! If there's a production company set up by Bad Wolf, it's absolutely like happening then.
Exactly. So, but it just feels like a bit of a random one.
That feels very random.
Tied to anything. Well, it doesn't seem.
My view of spin-offs is that like. Oh, I think they're very attuned to the fact that Star Wars spin-offs and Marvel spin-offs with all the endless spin-offs it doesn't really work.
Yes,
like,
they don't.
It works in the short form, but it very clearly doesn't work. And I think when I look at the Star Wars shows that I watch, the ones that I'm interested in are the ones that have the iconography of Star Wars. They either like have like Baby Yoda or sort of like, do you know what the Mandalorian? And they sort of, and I think the same should apply to Doctor Who. That the things that it's the iconography or the big characters and. I mean, as much as I love Katie Manning, are you going to put Joe Jones at the front of the spin-off?
Of course not. Absolutely not. Yeah.
So I can't really think if the spin-off's cool. Like, I don't think the Sea Devils or the Silurians are really icons of Doctor Who.
No.
I think they're interesting, but I think they're very much not sort of a unique Doctor Who thing. The thing about sort of like what people were sort of like that's been done all over fiction. So I think that's an odd one. I think I prefer a Unit spin-off, even though I don't think that a Unit spin-off is strictly necessary. So I think that would just be another sort of like Doctor Who sort of thing.
Yeah.
That seems extremely odd to me. It depends. I think it'd be seldom who is starring in it.
Yes.
What is the connection to Doctor Who, and it can't just be these are monsters from Doctor Who.
Yes, with a load of random new main cast, it would just like we saw with Class that didn't really work.
No,
like
that's interesting. Yeah, because I've always been quite a defender of Class actually.
Like I do quite like it, but it clearly didn't catch on to the general audience because it got cancelled.
And it didn't just have the problem of connection. I think the connection didn't help. But it had a problem of who was the audience, and a really sort of like big, like it couldn't find an audience, or it wasn't clear about what the audience was as Booty 3 was going digital. And it'd be like, well, who would be the audience for a C double thing?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Generic. And it feels very for the fans rather than for a general audience, which I feel like, yes, a spin-off is always going to be a little bit fanny, but it still needs to have that general audience appeal to be something that's actually going to work. As you know, will they do a BBC Three drop it all at once type thing? Is this meant to be a BBC One, spin-off? So I don't know. I'm really interested.
All right. Yeah, I'm interested. I'm interested or not.
A lot. He's like very clear there's going to be spin-offs.
Yeah, I do want spin-offs, but I don't know if that would be how I start.
So 2023 Doctor Who year, 60th year. Has it been a good anniversary year?
I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed myself sort of like in doing what I like to do, like Doctor Who wise, which is sort of like reading the magazine, listening to my audios, like collecting the action figures, that sort of thing. I think the episodes that we got were brilliant.
Yeah.
I think in terms of events and that, I was really, really hoping there'd be a convention inside of the 50th, and like we had a plan that we would go because we never went to the 50th one, and I was really disappointed that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I think there's been so much content, and like we haven't talked about like the Whoniverse put on iPlayer, and I think there's they are making such a big deal of the show. So yeah, I'd say it has been a good year. I would.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it kind of didn't feel as anniversary like as I was hoping the whole year. I think because I kind of wasn't as tuned into Doctor Who during 2013, I didn't sort of make the most of that being the 50th year, and there was so much stuff for that year. I know there was, but I didn't sort of make the most of it almost. I was kind of hoping we'd get that kind of thing, but obviously without the show for 11 months of the year, that was always going to be the case, that it was going to feel less as big an anniversary, and the 60th is just less big than the 50th fundamentally, isn't it, really?
And I think just anniversaries of TV shows are an odd thing that don't really happen like
on
outside a few, and like they did put a lot of content out in November, like across like TV and radio. I think there's things like sort of like, I think the thing that felt less to me was like events like the Doctor Who concert, which was sort of like behind, like it's very selective who got to go, and I think they could have like made that more open up to the general public. There's been a few things like that actually. There's been lots of events, screenings of the episodes where celebrity fans or friends of people who work on the show have been invited. Yes. So the general public haven't. And it's all things like sort of like where the Meep is there and sort of like all the props of the show and sort of like that's been very selected. It does feel sort of like hierarchical or like do you know what I mean? And it
definitely.
This is a fan culture that I do not partake in at all.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like the celebrity fans, or as you say, friends of the production team get the sort of priority to go to all these little closed events, and they get the extra insight into that, which I think.
And they do a lot of like sort of like they seem to do a lot of things at these extra closed events, like in terms of giving out stuff or sort of like, do you know what I mean? It seems to be a lot of effort and a lot of money goes into something.
Yeah, for 300 people that is mostly specially invited guests. That doesn't really boost anything marketing wise for the wider show.
No, well maybe it does in terms of those journalists, and I think someone like mentioned like there was something that you weren't like one of these. I think Darren Scott of who's the editor of SFX was saying that some sort of thing recently you weren't allowed to either photograph or video, and all the influencers were really pissed off about it. And that just made me think, maybe there is a strategy. Like, well, no, there's got to be a strategy, but maybe this is a strategy that I'm not aware of or don't think about, because again, that's just not a world that I inhabit. I don't have TikTok, but a lot of people do, and a lot of people are like influenced by that sort of thing. So maybe there is a reason why these people are there, but it does feel quite selective, and that just removes you from it slightly. I think, oh, okay, those are the people that they care about.
I think it's very easy to feel like that, isn't it? I think, and it does feel like that sometimes. So I guess we just have to enjoy the show as it is. And
well, this is the thing. That's what I say. I think it has been a good year on sort of like in what I've done, sort of like in how I've enjoyed the show, and so I thought about it. So like every day I've been so excited for the 60th, and I like watching them back yesterday. I loved all of them. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. And I'm so excited for Christmas. And I think the last couple of years, I very much enjoyed Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who. I absolutely saw the issues that like there are with it, which is true. We've talked about a lot, but I don't think I've ever been this excited. Or no, the last time I was this excited for Doctor Who was just before Jodie started.
Yes,
and that very quickly went downhill.
Especially Series 11,
and this is sort of like this was wobbling for a couple of episodes, but now it's back up the streak again.
And it feels like Shooty. It's just all positive. It's all going to be great, and we're really excited for it. And it feels, like the start of we've finally launched this new era, and it's great, rather than launching the new Jodie era and then it not being what we were hoping.
No, and I think this is like the thing as well. Like, I'm sure there will be problems with Shooty's era, or there'll be like different, because nothing is perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I think when we think about how much content we've had as well, in terms of like Tales from the TARDIS, Doctor Who Unleashed, the sort of the Daleks colorization, I think that's all been fantastic. So I don't know if you actually sat down and put it into a spreadsheet, if there was more content for the 50th. It probably felt more like sort of in your face, but I think the more we move away from linear sort of television in that sort of way, this feels more like the brand has felt very sort of like alive. But I had felt like I didn't see very many TV trailers or like that sort of like, oh, don't forget Doctor Who's at 7 o'clock at this time. But maybe that's not the world anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think
maybe I'm not.
The audience figures have been pretty good. Like the viewing figures have been very solidly decent for these episodes. It's certainly not, it's never going to be 13 million because we're in 2023, not 2005. Like, so it's pointless in comparing numbers from 15 years ago, but you compare it to TV at the moment, and actually they're really good.
Yeah.
And the whole Disney deal means, everything's going to be real secure anyway for the long term. So I don't think the audience figures really matter. And what, we know there's always going to be a big audience for Doctor Who, and that's fine. And there's money there, and they'll keep making it.
The audience has never bothered me that much. It's just about storytelling. It's about the quality of storytelling. I think that's why sort of like I don't have a problem with bigeneration in terms of the canon of the show. That's like, it's in the moment. Is that good storytelling? Is that like sort of being sold for all it can be in the moment? And to me it was. So I was happy.